Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday Vlog, where we discuss activity that goes on here with the BuzWeaver channel. That includes things like current events, headlines that are in the news, pop culture, social media, technology, and items of interest that come up during the week that allow us to have a little bit of a dialogue. If this is your first time here to the channel, I'd like to welcome you here. Or if you are a returning visitor and haven't subscribed just yet, I would encourage you guys to click on that watermark down there in the bottom right-hand corner to subscribe, along with notifications. In gaming news, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, Infinity Ward released the 1.20 update, a rather large update, around 30 gigs for us here on PC. That included the new Obsidian camo, the ability to swap blueprints, and of course a host of changes and fixes, along with some interesting additions to both Warzone and Plunder. You guys can check that out up here in the top right-hand corner. I think you'll find it rather interesting and entertaining. And of course, we are anticipating this Friday double XP weekend, or another double XP weekend, which I'm very much looking forward to. So be sure to make that click up there in the top right-hand corner and check out the update. Kim Jong-Un, the leader of North Korea, has been in the news and in the headlines here for the last several days, if not week, as people are kind of speculating on his particular condition or his location. But nonetheless, I did see an ABC news report just recently, as they pointed out that several years ago he had disappeared for about 6 weeks. And upon his return, or we saw him on video sitting on a couch with a cane, and we had learned at that time of the release of the video that he had had some ankle surgery performed on him. And so as of right now, some have suggested that he has had some sort of procedure done, perhaps a heart procedure, or that he may be just hiding away from the current pandemic. So there is a number of different things that could be going on, but more concerning, considering his absence, or the potential outcome of this absence, could create a bit of a destabilization there in the region. We already see that kind of countries' levels of anxiety and tension are rising as a result of this epidemic. And of course, the Chinese have been challenging many of the countries within that region over the South China Sea, establishing bases and stuff of that nature, right? So the curious thing will be, of course, that most people may not be particularly concerned about the condition of Kim Jong-un, but the fact is that if something were to be, say, something rather devastating happened, or he had passed away, it could create quite a destabilization in that region, which could be a growing concern, which a lot of people are also talking about. But nonetheless, guys, we will have to just kind of keep an eye on Kim Jong-un and kind of see if we get some sort of information or some type of confirmation here, maybe in the next several days or next several weeks. I will link some information for you guys below the video. Also this week, Joe Biden held another virtual town hall meeting. In this one, we see Hillary Clinton there to endorse Joe Biden. So it is patently clear, and as we had suspected and had been talking about pretty much since he entered the race, that it was going to be all about Team Joe Biden. And we can already see that the media, as we always discuss, which is an extension of the Democratic Party, is essentially propping up Joe and even covering for his cognitive decline, something that cannot be denied even among the Democrats and even among the media. But we see how the media works, and we see how the opposition party, as it were, work in general. They will prop Joe Biden up. They will, of course, put him in a positive light so that they can promote and essentially encourage individuals to vote for Joe Biden, as Hillary Clinton outlined some of the things about how, if he were in charge right now, some of the things that he could do. But no one has anything to make these distinctions from. I've seen these sorts of arguments before. How can you make distinctions about what could have been done or what should have been done when something like this, the pandemic that is, has occurred, and there has been no reference from which we could say, well, President Trump should have done this or he should have done that. He is, to the best of my knowledge and what we have seen, done the best that he can under the circumstances. And being a business leader, being the President of the United States, and having that background in business, knowing how to get things done, because that's what he likes to do. He likes to solve problems. He likes to build buildings. He likes to bring people within the business world together. He likes to bring great minds together to solve problems and achieve things. So that has been one of his key marker abilities within this current pandemic. But nonetheless, as we have talked about, of course, it is all going to be about Team Biden. Now, right now, very few of those in the media are covering Tara Reade, a former employee of Joe Biden, a campaign individual within the Democratic Party that worked for Joe Biden, who makes the claim that she had been sexually assaulted by him. Now, of course, there was a video released of her mother calling into Larry King and describing what had happened. You know, she kind of described it very vaguely, of course, because at the time they were within that, within the Democratic Party and supporters of the Democratic Party and maybe even Biden at the time as she worked for him. That apparently has disappeared. That particular show is no longer available. Some say that it was conveniently removed by Google, where it was being hosted on a hosting platform. I was going to say Spotify, but I don't think it was on Spotify, but it was on a hosting platform that allowed you to see previous shows of Larry King. However, there was also conversation that there were some other shows that did not appear, but that could have been because on those particular days, those were actual holidays, and so there was no show recorded at that time. But as far as Tara Reade is concerned, there are levels of credibility. And of course, you have the Me Too movement rules, right? Believe her. And we have seen celebrities, for example, Melissa Milano, who was there at the Kavanaugh hearing, suggesting that, of course, in his 30-year-old situation, or a situation that never manifested itself with Christine Blasey Ford, that never manifested itself, and it was never really determined. And of course, he was in a confirmation hearing. This was not a trial. This was yet another tool by the Democrats taking advantage of a situation to then put him in a difficult spot. But here we have it. Melissa Milano and the individuals there who were all behind the Me Too movement not saying very much, actually kind of even putting up a bit of a defense for Joe Biden in this particular circumstance. But you know, and I know, if this had been a Republican or even President Trump, this would be worldwide news 24/7 across all the mainstream media all over the world if this had been an allegation made towards President Trump. Because we have already seen what the media has done, of course, because their mantra, as we have just discussed, is Orange Man Bad. So now Team Biden has been established. The Democrats, the mainstream media, Trump detractors will get behind Joe Biden. I don't think we're going to see a lot of Bernie bros really supporting Joe Biden. And of course, the radical progressive left, or progressives in general, aren't very Team Biden oriented themselves, because as we have talked about here, the Democrats are actually fractured. But there is so many different things that can unfold here, because as one of the phrases that we like to use here on the show, as we talked about, is that who does it benefit, right? So right now we have the pandemic. So you have to say, and I don't mean to be insensitive, and I don't mean to kind of dismiss or kind of play down the current events that we're going through. I'm trying to not say what it is, of course, because it is a very sensitive topic that we're going through. We're going through a very difficult time. And in my next segment, I'm going to talk about something that pertains to the difficulties and challenges that we're facing. So I'm just saying kind of hypothetically here that if we continue into the pandemic, if it goes into November, I think that, of course, the party could be making moves to maybe move to a mail-in ballot, which is what they kind of want. Because again, like I said, you always have to ask the question, who does it benefit? And you would think, right? You would think that if a group of people are that concerned about an election, that we would have voter IDs. Voter IDs would be very specific to an individual and would guarantee at least some levels of awareness of who was voting and who that individual is, so that there wouldn't be an opportunity for any type of nefarious activity going on in the voting. But again, who does it benefit to do mail-in ballots, for example, that can't always be accounted for? I actually have a mail-in ballot myself, and I've seen it. It's one sheet, and that's it. And potentially, I could give that sheet to someone else, or whatever it is that I want to do with it, and there would be no accountability as to who I am. There's no personal information that they're going to be able to do like any major deep dive information on who was submitting that document. But a voter ID would, right? I have to have a concealed carry permit to carry my weapon concealed. If I were to start a business or something of that nature, I would have to have permits, I would have to have licenses, I would have to have certificates, I would have to have all sorts of things that allow me to perform that business. Or if I went to fish or hunt, I would have to go and get a permit. So why not a voter ID? But nonetheless, guys, I will leave a link to the information and details about the town hall meeting and, of course, Team Biden below this video. As of this week, we learned that the president may utilize the Defense Production Act, or the Production Defense Act, however it's actually worded, from 1950 to ensure that meat processing plants stay open. In the video you see running here in this commentary, you will at some point see the map of the United States and see 10 red dots indicating facilities that have been affected by the illness that I cannot mention by name, and the other facilities in white dots throughout the United States. So it does appear that it's just, as of now, 10 that have been specifically or particularly affected either by workers or individuals within those processing plants that have come down with an illness. But I do want to read from the actual article, or from one of the articles that I will link to you down below so you guys can get certain levels of detail. President Donald Trump will order meat processing plants to remain open, declaring them critical infrastructure, as the illness outbreak forces the plants to close and potentially jeopardize the U.S. food supply, a news report said on Tuesday. Tyson Foods Chairman John Tyson said that millions of pigs, chickens, and cattle will be euthanized because of slaughterhouse closures, which hurt supplies at groceries. Now, we've heard Sonny Perdue, our former governor, talk about this during the briefings, that the supply chains are up and they are working, and that's fine. However, some of those supplies and distributions have been affected, and so many of the farmers have had to dump milk, they've had to euthanize and already kill animals, because it is a process, right? As the individual you see in the video was saying, that animals aren't a static product. They are raising these animals, and so there's a constant cycle of processing them, and then of course raising the younger animals to maturity to then process them as well. I know it seems very insensitive. I don't mean to seem insensitive to that, but I'm just simply telling you the details of the process itself. Tyson said in a blog post and full-page advertisement published Sunday in the New York Times and the Washington Post and other outlets that the food supply chain is breaking and vulnerable. Very concerning, because I remember seeing an exchange on Twitter between a former federal worker and a media agent, and they were going back, or a journalist, I should say, or activist journalist, and they were kind of going back and forth over, this is at the very beginning. Remember when the president had to come out and show the media actually playing down the current illness itself? And then this individual was going back and forth with this journalist saying, okay, well, you can try to play it down, but just wait until the FDA decides it wants to close down processing. Apparently, he was a former federal individual that worked for the FDA. So nonetheless, we kind of had the warning signs and the foreshadowing quite some time back that it could lead to this, right? Because if people were to get ill at these processing plants, of course, like they would anywhere else, it's going to affect business. So in small communities around the country where we employ over 100,000 hardworking men and women, we're being forced to shutter our doors, Tyson said. This means one thing: the food supply chain is vulnerable, as pork, beef, and chicken plants are being forced to close even for short periods of time. Millions of people, or millions of pounds of meat, will disappear from the supply chain. So we can see here that businesses and companies, they might be able to weather some difficulties and some challenges. For example, we know hurricane season happens. We know that in the winter, we get some very hard snows that can shut things down. And maybe companies and businesses have to close down for a week in certain areas of the country. But this is affecting the entire United States. And we can already see, for example, and I would argue that part of the reason that many of these governors in these states are starting to open things up is because people are already out trying to get things done, already out there trying to do what it is that they want to do to conduct their lives and continue on. Now, I would say that Americans, of course, are willing to comply, are able to comply for a particular period of time. But now we're starting to see individuals go out there and kind of just try to go back to some form of routine. And of course, they want to be able to purchase the foods and the goods and the products that they would normally get, as well as get those haircuts or nails done, or I'm not sure why you would need a particular massage, but it's there, or go bowling, whatever it is. Now, some of these companies in my state did not open. And it would appear from pictures that I've seen from people on my Facebook page and stuff that when they do have their nails done or go to the barber shop or the salon or wherever it is they're going, it's usually one person at a time, typically, or by appointment only. So like I said earlier, there are solutions to this. We often like to see Trump detractors and so forth kind of present questions as though there's no solution, or we're so overwhelmed, or how are we going to deal with this? There are solutions. We can come up with solutions. We have people that are able to adapt and overcome the difficulties and challenges that we are facing. So yes, the meat facilities can find ways to maybe not produce as much as they may have or as quickly as they could, but at least they can modify their business to be able to at least keep some form of the supply chain going, you know, whether that's in particular shifts or however it is they're going to work it out. But there can be a solution, there can be a way to fix it. But it does appear as though the president will have to take measures to ensure these facilities stay open and the food supply is out there. So it will be interesting to see how the media and other individuals react to this particular decision-making process. But nonetheless, guys, I will leave a link to this information below the video. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this Friday vlog. I want to thank all of you guys for your continued participation here on the channel. And of course, if you haven't already, those of you who are on BitChute and or DTube, be sure to give me a follow there on those platforms. And of course, all of you guys here on YouTube, you see the obligatory channel icon appearing right there on the screen to subscribe, and click on that for notifications. That way you guys will know when there's content here on the channel, as well as the Friday vlog. And I'll see you guys right there behind that camera next week.